All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Very glad you're here. We're going to start our webinar now. Thank you so much for joining us at the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage. Before we begin, I just want to remind folks about the closed caption that's available tonight. That I misspoke. It is not auto-generated. It is actually human-generated tonight, which means it will be extremely accurate, and it is here so that you can read along if you would like, if that is a way to gain more accessibility to tonight's webinar. So that is at the bottom of the screen. There's a button with CC. You can go ahead and click it. My name is Selena Morales, and I am a member of the Advisory Council at the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage. And we are thrilled to have you get this preview of the Folklife Festival, Looking Forward, Youth and the Future of Culture. The Smithsonian Folklife Festival, established in 1967, honors contemporary living cultural traditions and celebrates those who practice and sustain them. Produced annually by the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage, the festival has featured participants from all 50 states and more than 100 countries. Our festival takes place every summer on the National Mall with free performances, workshops, demonstrations, and other activities. It is an educational, research-based presentation that features master artisans and other tradition bearers. We invite visitors to sing and dance along, try crafts and games, learn traditional recipes, ask questions, and take part in this unique cultural exchange. In a moment, curators Sabrina Motley and Michelle Banks will tell us more about this exciting program for this year. But first, housekeeping. We will host a question and answer period following the conversation between Sabrina, Michelle, and Andrea. So please put any questions that you have in the Q&A box that you can find at the bottom of your screen, and then we'll answer them as time allows at the end. We'll also include links to any programs or websites that we mention in the presentation. We'll put those in the chat so that you can follow along. It is now my pleasure to introduce Sabrina Lynn Motley, Festival Director, and Michelle Banks, Lead Curator of the 2025 Folklife Festival, together with Andrea Mallorca, one of this year's curatorial assistants. These women are a part of a team of brilliant minds. They're the thinkers, the makers, the caretakers whose ideas, insights, and dedication shape the festival each year from behind the scenes. I've had the privilege of serving on the council for 6 years now, and it is the opportunity to support and collaborate with these inspiring individuals that continues to fuel my commitment to the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage. It is a work and it is a place that I really feel is critical for world building. So I will introduce our speakers now. As you're listening to their bios, I just also want you to consider the various experiences that they've had and the lenses that they bring to their curatorial practice. I find it extremely impressive. Sabrina Lynn Motley joined the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage in 2013 as the director of the Smithsonian Folklife Festival. Previously, she was the Senior Director of Programs and Exhibitions at Asia Society Texas Center, overseeing content-rich public programs and exhibitions highlighting Houston's expanding connection with Asia. Before the Texas Center, Sabrina was Vice President of Vesper Society, a social justice foundation, and a program and education director at the Japanese American National Museum, a Smithsonian affiliate. She curated public programs at the Getty Museum and community-based exhibitions for the California Endowment. Sabrina's taught anthropology at Art Center College of Design and Otis Institute of Art and Design. She also hosted the Global Village of KPFK in Los Angeles. She earned a BA in World Arts and Culture and an MA in African Studies, both from UCLA, and is currently a doctoral candidate in anthropology, conducting research on the interplay between religious faith, doubt, and social activism. Michelle Banks is a cultural worker from Washington, D.C., and was co-curator from the 2023 Smithsonian Folklife Festival program, Creative Encounters, Living Religions in the United States. Michelle has an MA in Cultural Sustainability from Goucher College and a PhD in Sustainability Education from Prescott College. A former educator and teaching artist, she takes a transdisciplinary approach to work that explores the intersections of language, culture, and sustainability. Her research disciplines include biocultural diversity, historical memory, and spiritual ecology. Andrea Mayorga is an applied anthropologist from Los Angeles, California, and is currently a curatorial assistant at the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage. She previously worked as a program assistant in the 2022 and 2024 Folklife Festival, and Andrea earned her BA in anthropology from Cal State Northridge and her MA in anthropology from Cal State Long Beach. Her research backgrounds include traditional science practices and outdoor environment education. Wow. Y'all are super impressive. And like I said, the lenses that you bring to this work, I think make it so rich and meaningful. And I'm looking forward to hearing about it tonight. So without further ado, welcome to our speakers.
Thank you. Thank you, Selena. And I want to thank all of my colleagues, many of whom are here as attendees. So we've got a great crowd. I'm going to ask everyone who's here, if you don't mind, just in the chat, just dropping a note, letting us know where you're coming from. And if you've been to the festival before, you heard a little bit about what we do. And we're going to share what's coming up, which is, I think, really exciting. To give you a little taste, though, we're going to start with music from Sugar in the Pan. Is there audio coming through? Andre, can you hear the audio? So we're going to end or come back to Sugar in the Pan while we'll sort out the audio. Yeah, thank you. We'll go into our conversation. Thank you. So we'll go into our conversation. So we're here to talk about what's coming up for the Folklife Festival. And as you heard, it started in 1967. And in those very early years, and in the decades since, young people have been integral to the work that we present. This is the first time, though, that we have decided to focus on the cultural practice of youth, to get a sense of the world that they will inherit, the world that they're shaping, to listen closely to their concerns, their spaces of joy. And I think I feel confident in saying, on behalf of, I think, all of my colleagues, that this has been really a wonderful program to pull together. We've met people from all over the US. We've engaged people in new ways, people that we've known. And they've asked us a lot of hard questions that I think not only you'll see, and we'll try to answer on the National Mall this summer, but I think questions that will fuel our work in the days and months and years to come. It's been a great honor to work with my colleagues and with so many participants across the country. And I want to particularly thank Michelle Banks, who is our lead curator for this year, working with others to give shape to a very sprawling concept, youth in the future of culture, to help us ensure that the taste, the little bite that we bring to the National Mall soon, in a couple weeks, starting July 2nd, will be rich bites and experiences that can feed us, as I say, for the days to come. So, Michelle, I'm going to turn it to you to talk about the program itself and tell us what we're going to experience and help us think about some of the things that how should we prepare ourselves to get ourselves to the mall?
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Sabrina and Selena. So this program, Youth in the Future of Culture, um, this program is really about how young people engage with and carry on cultural traditions. It's about intergenerational learning and really about the contributions and experiences of youth. As Sabrina mentioned, young people have participated in many festival programs, but this is the first time that we are really focusing on their experience. And we believe that doing this, having this program right now is pretty timely. As we think about how young people influence and engage with culture and really how they're innovating and carrying on cultural practices and traditions. The program is animated by three interconnected themes. Here are our worlds, which is, of course, is expressive culture among youth, which includes music and fashion and language and sports and all things in between. Excuse me, engaging tradition looks at intergenerational exchanges between youth and their master apprentices and their mentors. So this is a program that's focused on youth, but it also celebrates the work that mentors do as well, which is a very important centerpiece of the program. And then the final theme is the world we want, and it's about world building and worlding and reimagining what the future might be. The program, there's a language of the festival. We often talk about festival programs, but we're sort of thinking about this as these clusters of really important work and ways to sort of gain some insight into some of the things that young people are engaged in. Those clusters include emerging media makers, which is really looking at how young people are using media to elevate their voices. Learning together is this exploration of children and youth and how the importance of families and communities and carrying on tradition as well and how we learn. We're working with a group of local youngsters, teens from the DC metropolitan area. They call themselves the MOCAT, or the Museum of Contemporary American Teenagers, and they're looking at everything from um, music and teen expressive culture, but also issues around being a young person in school. In school, music, you the music is always really a centerpiece of all festival programs. So, and we're super excited and honored to have some of the practitioners joining us in our music apprenticeship cluster. So we'll be offering performances and master classes and collaborations between the likes of Stax Music Academy, Mariachi El Tesoro from San Fernando, California, and Sugar in the Pan, which I think we'll circle back around and try to listen to some of their music. But they're an incredible contra dance group from Vermont. Native language reclamation in the United States brings together community members and young people from Hawaii, Alaska, Oklahoma, from the Myaamia Nation, and Mohawk communities from upstate New York and Canada. And these are young people who are working to reclaim language and traditions. Next Generation Artisans looks at young apprentices and master crafts people who are carrying on specialized building trades, such as building traditions, such as stone carving and blacksmithing. And Streetwise, which is an exploration of how young people claim urban spaces through the likes of lowrider bikes and cars, skateboarding, and sidewalk astronomy. And finally, wordsmiths and storytellers. As many of you know, there's been, I guess, over the last two decades or so, there's been sort of this explosion of narrative and verse, and so this is really a focus on how youth are breathing new life into literary traditions and scenes. This image is from one of the groups who will be gracing our stage during one of our evening concerts. That concert is our first evening concert made in DC, and this is the DCPS Let's Go Go Band, who are, according to them, going to find what the next are developing what the next generation of go-go bands is like in the DC area. So, as Sabrina mentioned, that this, we are that this program is timely. This animating theme is a timely theme. So some of the messages that we want to share as part of this program is that young people are creative forces who make really significant contributions to the cultural landscape. And it's important for us to recognize that. Youth culture is diverse, dynamic, and always in a state of becoming. And despite the fact that, we've all been, at some point, if you're older now, at some point you were younger. So I think it's really important for us to sort of remember that and to sort of keep in mind that every generation influences and engages in a certain way, but it also creates the foundation for the next generation. And then finally, young people are actively involved in advocacy work to reimagine the future. Um, so this program is happening right now in 2025 as we as a festival and as the festival as an institution looks forward to 2026 and the semi-quincentennial. This is an opportunity for us as an institution to sort of think about a little differently about how we support the next generation of cultural practitioners, but also the next generation of cultural workers. So I'm going to turn it over to my Andrea, who can talk a little bit about that.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrea Mayorga, curatorial assistant here at the center. And I have to say, we have an extra special cohort of interns this year, and I cannot stress enough how integral they have been and will continue to be to the creation of the festival. For background, we welcome interns for the Folklife Festival year-round, although the bulk of the work is in the summer during the festival. This summer, though, our interns will work on many different teams from, event production to tech crew to festival services. Many of them are already working very closely with the curatorial team on programming, and we also have a dedicated group of interns working with our documentation team. We have over 50 interns joining us this summer, with the youngest of them being 16 years old. And I think it's worth noting that as a center, we're really committed to providing stipends for all our interns. And so we do make this a part of our fundraising goals. I actually started as an intern myself in 2019, working on a project on the cultural value of American ginseng, which I knew very little about at the time. Eventually, I came to contribute to our festival blog and wrote a piece titled 10 Surprising Things About American Ginseng, which if you'd like the link, I'd be happy to share it with you. But I bring this up to highlight the fact that our interns not only work directly with, mentors and curators and educators from a variety of different backgrounds and expertise, but they also have the opportunity to take a deep dive into a festival topic that interests them and then share their findings in the form of like a widespread article or presentation, for example. Since interning, though, I've had the chance to work very closely with many different curators and festival participants, all of whom have inspired and guided my career trajectories for the better, I would say. I've always said that my dream job was working here at the Center for Folklife, so to be in front of all of you now as a curatorial assistant feels surreal to me. So I guess all of that to say, through our internship program, we're really striving to cultivate the next generation of culture workers, and we make it a point to create an intergenerational workplace. And so this is something we're implementing through our internship program for the 2025 festival.
Thanks to you both. And Andrea, what you've said actually makes me think about, again, going back to the festival program, this intergenerational piece, which was also one of the things that we talked a lot about when we were thinking about this year's festival program. There's places where cultural production is threatened, and people are right to be anxious. And afraid about what's next. Who's going to carry on these traditions? And then there are places that are vibrant and filled with hope and possibility. And I think you'll see this range at this year's festival. I think Michelle, some of the folks that you've been working with, whether it's colleagues who are working in native language reclamation, where you see this sort of, I don't know, it's like this buzz of energy around um, the transmission of language, the learning of language, and what that carries. I think really does give us hope. And then, can you give us some other examples where we can say, yes, it's really working? And then we can talk, of course, a little bit more about the places where, we should be concerned and we need to turn our attention. But thinking about the program this year, what should we be excited about?
Oh my gosh, what? I think for me is that we're opening the space for collaboration. I think one of the most exciting things that for me, and I don't even know what it's going to look like yet, is one of our evening concerts. We're bringing together Mariachi El Tesoro from San Fernando and the Association of Black Orchestral Percussionists, and they are currently collaborating on a classical music concert that will happen on Sunday, July 6th. And what we've done is the festival is bringing this together and giving them the opportunity to collaborate in ways that I don't think that they imagined. I know they didn't imagine up until about a week ago because this is something that just occurred. But hoping that that is what this space is really all about, that it's a space for collaboration. The festival does performances, and yes, we'll do performance, but we'll also have open rehearsals throughout the 6 days of the festival, in part because we want people to see that this is how these things come about. This is how music is formed. This is how pieces come together. This is how art is shaped. It comes through work. And again, sort of thinking about how do we support the next generation, that this is one way that we do that is by sort of creating a space where you have these two very different genres of music coming together to sort of create this concert at the festival. You have these folks from these different building trades coming together and share their work. But also, we've been talking with our lowrider bicycle. There's a lowrider bicycle leadership club that's coming from Olathe, Kansas, and we have a blacksmith on site. And every time we mention that, they say, "Yeah, but maybe it might be nice for them to come together and sort of see how these sort of similar but also very different skills get, and what these skills look like, but also having an opportunity to sort of perhaps work and see how these things, what these similarities are, but also what these differences are. Because I think for me, the thing that I'm most excited about is that we're trying to create a collaborative space. So that next generation of practitioners, perhaps some of those things might be seated on the National Mall.
This idea that we're not, alone, people are not working in a vacuum, and, there are these networks within community and extra community networks that hopefully we can help foster, as you say, on the National Mall. And the thing that I've been at this center for a little bit over 10 years, 11 years. And what I do know is that you don't know, right? So people come together and there's things that we see and we think there's sparks that are going to, carry all sorts of work forward. And sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And then there's these other things, these other moments that are just incredible. And we learn years later how deep those connections are. And people are going to each other's homes and engaging in each other's practice. And I think the festival is really good at setting that table where that can happen. And then if we are the better curators, if we can tap into sort of the best of ourselves, we kind of let that happen and step back. We have an incredible curatorial team that we work with. And technical team and administrative. There's a lot that puts the festival together. But it's really important that I think that we're all sort of working together to make these connections happen. And to then step back and just say, okay, well, what are we going to see? What are people willing to share? Andrea, I don't know. I mean, you've been to several festivals now and you've been working on this one. And I'm going to ask you, what are the things that you've seen that you thought, okay, this is really needed? This is needed now because this form is missing. You've been working with lowriders and others. Is there anything you think, okay, this is why we do the festival?
Well, I mean, for one, I would say the overall theme of this year is youth and the future of culture. So I feel like spotlighting youth is something that's very much needed and something that I've seen, us do through our work. And I think being able to go and watch, for example, like a narrative session where it is like a younger group of culture workers up there talking about what they do and like why they do it, I think now more than ever is super important to highlight. And I think it's very, it really goes down to like the root of the work that we do. So I would say that's definitely one thing I would highlight.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think to address the elephant room and then move on from it. We're really fortunate in this time of uncertainty that we have leadership that has said to us very clearly, as Secretary Bunch has said, you do this work. This is the work you do. And the Smithsonian is counting on you to do this work. And that's very powerful and very helpful. We have a relatively new center director and Cliff Murphy, who comes to us from the NEA. We've got colleagues from, again, this incredible richness of colleagues, and it feels grounding to be able to say, okay, this is really the festival. We're going to drop on our, almost 60 odd years. To do what we've done, but also to look to the future. And that includes the work that we're going to do, Youth in the Future Culture, but also I think I want to take a minute to say that we're planting some seeds for 2026, and we're all implicated in that work. The Folklife Festival will be the cornerstone public presentation of the Smithsonian for next year's 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And it will give us a moment for us to say, okay, again, why does this work matter now? What does it say about this country? What does it say about a shared future? All of these thorny questions that we will ask and hopefully answer through expressive culture and presentation from all 50 states, from 5 territories and the district. We're continuing to weave this beautiful story through the festival, and I'm inviting people to come back next year. But for now, I invite you to come to the National Mall this year. Again, it's July 2nd through the 7th. Our schedule is live, so you can go to our website at festival.si.edu. You can find out what's going on in depth, make your plans to be on the mall, from foodways to music to artisan demonstrations. Our friends who are lowriders are doing workshops, and you can make your own zine. There's just a lot that's happening this year. I also, and we're going to turn it over back to Selena for some Q&A. But I also wanted to know, Michelle, from you, what has surprised you about doing this work? When you know the festival, you have a very particular and beautiful connection through our dear Olivia Cadaval, who was really one of those guiding light curators. You've worked in many ways at the festival. Why is the festival still relevant? Is it still relevant? I'm biased, so I'm going to ask you the question.
No, I think every generation brings something different. Just like sort of thinking about this program is, each generation builds and young people stand in all eras. The festival stands in all eras too. And I think each generation of the festival brings something new and brings something different. Um, I think that sort of relating it back to um, what you just mentioned about Olivia, what we were talking about earlier about mentorship, is that I think that the festival, in its own way, is also a place for those sort of relationships to emerge and develop. So just as Andrea talked about, I started out at this um, as an intern, and I've, done this in the program assistant, and then I'm a curatorial assistant. So there was something there. There was something there that, um, because those of you who've been to the festival, it's hot and it's dusty, and it's like it's a labor of love when you're out there. It's like, but people continue to come back, and that is the case for many of our interns, but it's the case also for many of our festival visitors as well. I'm always amazed at how, cleaning up or putting away chairs at the end of a session, you'll start talking to someone, oh, my first festival was in 1972, or my first festival was in 1976. So I've been at this for 40 years, and I've been at this for 50 years, and people take ownership. And they
Mhm.
tell you what they want, and they tell you what they didn't like, and they tell
That
you
is
what you
true.
should do. But they continue to come because they're willing to sort of say, suspend whatever sort of ownership, or suspend whatever sort of um, critique that they have, to be able to sort of be in this space and convene in this space and have these conversations with our festival participants, with other visitors, with festival staff, because again, there's all of these things are woven together in pretty profound ways. So I think that that's what is the most important piece, is that there is this sense of um, that this space, that this convening that we do is really important.
Mhm. I appreciate you talking about convening. And one of the things that I also really love that you have said is that you are challenging the Smithsonian through this work to be a resource, to be seen for a resource, as a resource for, even young kids who are in the DC area who don't come to the mall and perhaps don't see the Smithsonian as something that is that should be integral to their cultural life. Um, where did that come from? Where did that thinking about the work in this way come from? I know that you clocked some hours at the Smithsonian when you were growing up. I feel like
Oh yeah, so I was kind of an egghead growing up. But being an egghead didn't mean always going to school. So I would cut school and go to the museums or go to the library, and the security guys would be, "What are you doing here?" And I, walking around behind um, like visiting groups from wherever they were visiting from. And they knew I wasn't with those groups, but they let me stay. And I think they let me, I'm assuming they let me. So I'm thankful for them for letting me stay. And I imagine that for them, it was like, okay, I know at least between these hours of 2 and 4, while this little girl is roaming through this museum, that she's safe and that she's learning. So for me, having done that, having been um, felt like this was a place where I could sort of be immersed and sort of let loose and be this egghead and sort of like take things in no matter what they were. Um, and then realizing when I was doing um, field work for this particular program, when I would visit places and visit community centers and schools, and I'd say, "How many of you know the festival?" Nobody. How many, you go to a school and say, "Well, how many of you know the Smithsonian?" Like a few hands, and yeah, we went down for a school trip or that sort of thing. So what I really, really, really hope is that we have sort of enough of a crucial mass of young people from different communities in DC, in the DC metro area, who will there's a different constellation that exists when you have young people. There's teachers and aunties
right,
and family
right.
members and
Yeah.
neighbors who will come out because they say, oh yeah, my baby, I can hear my mom, my baby girl is at the Smithsonian doing X. And that I believe is, I think, I think that in that way, I'm hoping this program is also kind of a reboot where we sort of like create an opportunity for others to sort of like that constellation of people who feel like, oh, okay, oh yeah, remember we went to that festival last year when Tim was playing. Let's go again. That's happening again. Let's see what's happening down in the mall. So I'm hoping that this is an opening for some people.
Yeah, I love what you said. That it's a place where young people can be safe and safe in learning. And to me, that sums up what I think a lot of what we're trying to do with the Folklife Festival, is to be that space where people, I guess I would say, feel safe in learning,
Yeah.
and asking questions. And again, that's something that I've seen time in and time out where people say, I got this question rumbling, sort of in my head, and I've never really been able to ask someone from that community, and that happens. And when those moments happen on the mall, that's pretty spectacular. I think that's when we know we've done our work well. So I appreciate you sort of raising that again. And it's a good reminder for those of us who are working on the festival, this one or any other program, that that's ultimately what we should be doing, is providing that space that is safe in learning, and in connecting. And again, I want to thank you. I personally want to thank you for taking this on and sort of helping us frame this to look at the work. I know you looked at the work that Kate Rensler has done, in this space. It was, very much in the DNA of the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage and the festival. And this is sort of this continuing conversation that we need to come to, and asking our young people, again, as you said, what is the world that they're creating? What is the world that they're inheriting? What is the world they're shaped by? What is the world they're shaping? These are all timeless questions. And speaking of questions, I'm getting a note. If you have questions that you want to raise, please drop them in the Q&A box. Selena's going to come back and join us for some conversation and questions. I also want to take a moment to, as we must, thank our sponsors. Some of them are here with us tonight, but I also need to thank in particular the National Museum of the American Latino, the Driehaus Foundation, the Casey Family Foundations, the 1772 Foundation, Richard Hampton Jenrette Foundation, the National Park Service, the Smithsonian Women's History Museum, as well as our many individual donors and supporters who make this all possible. And one of the things, Andrea, that you mentioned, I mean, you were an intern, and for one, I'm thrilled that you're back. But we have entered a phase where proudly we can say we're offering stipends to all interns, and want to grow our stipend pool. So I'm going to make a pitch to for those of you who are interested to join us, join our community, our circle of support, so that we can get more people like Andrea and others into this work. It is extraordinary work. It's hard, emotionally, intellectually, all the leads, but certainly worth it. And I know that you've got a lot of this was a cohort of young cultural workers in this office, that has sort of also brought this incredible energy, even as we celebrate, our elders, like our dear Olivia Cuddleval and others. It's a pretty spectacular place to be in. So I want to definitely thank all of my colleagues for the work they do, for allowing me to stand with them in doing this work. We have so much more to do. And sometimes it's like, it's hard to raise your head off the pillow. And then when you do, you're like, this is why. because I get to spend time with people like Andrea and Michelle. So thank you both. I'm going to call Selena back. She's going to lead us in more conversation and questions. And again, I want to thank all of my colleagues for doing this work in community and together.
Thank you, everybody. This has been super interesting. I have my notebook by my side and I'm scribbling all over it. Been kind of anxious to jump into the conversation. We did have a couple Q&As from the audience, and I just wanted to lift up particularly, there's been a theme about getting involved. And so I know that you've mentioned some on-roads and put into the chat the link to become, to join as a volunteer and pathway towards internship. But Andrea, I would wonder if you want to just reflect a little bit about kind of the onboarding, the arriving at. You said you knew nothing about ginseng when you first started to do your research. A lot of the questions in the Q&A have said, I've never been to the festival, but I want to be involved. What's that like? What is it like to arrive at the center, and kind of what's the on-ramp? If you could.
Well, first and foremost, everyone has always been super welcoming since like the first time I stepped in the office. People take the time out of their day to introduce themselves and ask you about what your personal interests are and why you were interested in becoming an intern or, working at the center in the first place. I feel like the team does a really good job of catching you up on where they're at when it comes to, festival programming and logistics and just like preparing for the festival to come. My internship was a little bit unique in the sense that it wasn't a festival internship. Actually came in the springtime, well, winter/spring. So it was more of like a research-based internship, and the American ginseng research that I did end up making its debut, not in 2019, but in 2022 during our Earth Optimism program. And I did get to come back for that one as a program assistant. So to kind of like see that really like early work that I had done in 2019 as an intern kind of just like come to fruition in 22 was really cool to see, and definitely like a proud moment of mine. But yeah, I mean, working as an intern was an unforgettable experience. I clearly loved it enough to come back and stick around. And I would recommend it to anyone that has, a background in or interest in, anthropology to ethnomusicology to library sciences and museum and language studies. I think there's a place here, even people outside of those fields. I think there's a place here for everyone. And yeah,
Thanks. Awesome. Your work there seems like it's been really impactful in your career trajectory, and I'm glad to hear about it. It's not lost on me at all that, we're talking about the festival coming up that's focused on youth and the future of culture. And the center has been so dedicated to supporting a workforce that understands festival production and festival itself being such an important cultural expression in this nation and around the world, that in addition to supporting the content and supporting the learning of the young people in our nation, you are also helping to continue this important folk practice by tooling people up and training them. I see some questions coming into the chat, into the question box now, but I wanted to also just toss out to you, Michelle. Um, in our practice as folklorists, we think a lot about the master artist, the artist who is the expert, and how they teach. We have a dynamic called the master apprenticeship, right? Where the master is always focusing on what's next and who's coming. And I'm wondering, in your research and planning for this festival, like if you could generalize a couple things, like what did you learn about learners? What did you come to understand about what learners need or how they're determining what's next in their cultural practice?
Mm, I think one of the things that um, I think one of the things that I was I guess I deal in anecdotes, so I have to tell you. So I was in Memphis at the Stax Music Academy, and there was, I forget who it was, but there was an LA producer on who was visiting for the weekend, and everybody's like hyped up. And I didn't know who it was. And we were in this session, and the young people in the session ranged in age from about 15. They were young. They were like, I think the youngest was probably about 13 or 14. And then the oldest might have been, they were all teens, so maybe 17 or 18. And the producer said something like, he was talking about his influences. He said, oh yeah, Otis Redding and Bill Withers and all of these kids just like, yes, yes, yes. That their influences were these artists who, oh my gosh, 50, 60 years before them. And I think in that, and then sort of that same trip, realizing that Otis Redding was 23 years old when he wrote and recorded Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. So I think what I'm trying to say with this is that um, being in these conversations and realizing that there is this sense that with the young people that I was working with and in contact with and in conversation with over the course of this last year or so, is that they are thinking about what they'll do with this work, but they're also very grounded in really understanding where these things come from. And I think that I don't know that it surprised me as much as that it sort of confirmed for me that, because at the same time I was in conversations with people and I say, oh yeah, we're doing youth. Oh, they're always on their phones. That was sort of like the sum total of what people, I must have heard that every week, at least 2 or 3 times a week. So that was sort of the sum total of what folks sort of, understood about or even was willing to sort of engage with. So why are you doing that? But sort of having that other experience of realizing how grounded the people were and how committed they were and how disciplined they were. When I went to see Mariachi El Tesoro, it was a Tuesday evening, and their rehearsal went until 9 in the evening. And that from the time they arrived, we were sort of in the room where they rehearse before the students. And so I was meeting with some of the directors, and our meeting ran over a little, and the kids were like at the windows, like, what is going on? We need to get in here and get going. Because again, you could feel that they were ready, that this is what they were ready to do this work. So I think that I think that's it, how grounded these young artists are. The Sugar in the Pan, they sent us all these photographs of the student when, 2 years old with a violin as big as they are, but again, so they've been at this work forever. But I think that is the thing, that there's this grounding that people don't recognize, and there's this grounding that people don't acknowledge. And I think that this is an opportunity for us to acknowledge that and say, yeah, certainly they're on their phones, but so are many adults. And not only that, but they're also doing things, because we have this idea of, we talk about young people will inherit the future, but but they shape it. And you'll see some of that on the mall in July, how young people are shaping what that future will look like.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thanks for that. And I'm hearing it in a lot of the responses that you've given today, right? Like the programmatic frame of culture in a place of becoming, and that on the mall, as participants, we are all going to witness some of that becoming
Yeah.
as you place youth in contexts and scenarios that will require the creation of new culture in the moment, or seed that. And so I love how thoroughly you understand what you're working on, that it can be manifest in real time for
Yeah.
many of us to participate in, and also for the youth to hold on to those experiences and be enriched by them as a result of having come to the festival this year.
Yeah.
I'm gonna toss another question out, if that's all right. We have one here. I'm gonna give it to you, Sabrina, and then maybe it'll ping around a bit. But how do you maintain conversations about folk life and American culture when American culture is globally seen in a very limiting way? How do you combat those who don't see a reason for highlighting things like lowriders or Black orchestra members?
Wow, it's a great question and certainly one that we grapple with, particularly now. I think that the answer to the question is in the doing. So I don't have a pat answer, but I do know that having lowriders from Kansas and Sacramento, and we've got folks coming from Indonesia who are also involved in the lowriding culture, that itself, having these young people on the mall speaking about their experiences, about their creative lives, about the lives of their community. I think that that's the answer to that question. I mean, I'm not such a Pollyanna that I think everybody who's going to come, who passes through the festival and um, doesn't get what, is driving this question, that'll completely change their mind. But I think it'd be really hard not to. I think it's hard to ignore, to turn away from people in real time, face to face on the mall. There is still power in that. And that is the thing I hope that will break down some of those walls, that will get to um, shaking loose some of the negative ways that we engage with one another. And no, it won't happen overnight, and it'll take 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 festivals and more. Um, but I think that there's power there. Again, I go back to this, like, we need to set the table. We need to set a really good, rich, abundant table where people can come and they can get food for the journey, right? They can continue to nurture themselves in very, very deep ways, in ways that when they leave the mall may shock them. Because I hope that it's hard to think the worst of someone you don't know when you've met someone you don't know in such a profound way. Um, yeah, I'm gonna ask Michelle. Actually, I'm gonna ask you, Selena, that same question. Um, how do you respond to that question? Because it's hard, and you do this work as well.
Yeah, I love what you shared, Sabrina, and I think that that's right on when we're thinking about the audience members or the people coming through the mall. But I also want to think together about the dynamic of the experience of the participants because it is hundreds of people when you think about the individuals coming from their homes to present their culture on a national stage and the impact that that itself has on the individual practitioner, their community of practice, the people that they share that culture with, their families, if they're outside of that cultural practice, the community they go back home to, having had that experience enriched by their trip, and then how that cultural practice inevitably impacts their own communities. So all of that engagement and care and development of those cultural ways of knowing and being in the world, whatever they are, whether it's low riding or whether it's playing music, um, are centered and highlighted for those individuals without even considering folks that are coming to watch and witness, to judge or embrace. And I think that that is what makes this festival so brilliant, is that it's not just about display or performance or show, but it truly is the practice of culture on a national scale. And so anyway, I feel that to me that is as important as folks that come by to watch for the day or to visit
Mhm.
annually.
I think I appreciate that. And our colleague Lisa dropped in a quote from Bernice Johnson Reagan, in which she said the Smithsonian Festival of American Folklife, as it was then known, actually was an effort to put something on the mall in Washington so American tourists could walk through America and in their minds, everything on the mall would be American, which is which is a pretty profound statement. And I think of that particularly when we do quote unquote country programs where, to me, it's important that it's not foreigners on parade, right? That's not the point of this because these are your neighbors too. We have a Peruvian program. The person you work with could be Peruvian American. And again, you get this another glimpse into, as you say, Selena, as we've all been talking tonight about the histories, about these intersections of time and space, about the person who lives next to you, that you go to church with or mosque with. I mean, all of this stuff sort of bubbles up on the mall in these ways at the Folklife Festival. And I love this quote. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing that. Everything on the mall would be American. I think it's a reality check.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. And a beautiful way to end our session together tonight. We have a few questions left, but we won't be able to get to them. But if your curiosity is piqued, please come visit us. Visit us on the mall, July 2nd until the 7th. The schedule is already posted online and more details will be added there. And I think we've already seen it in the chat, but it might come around again before you sign off. I want to thank Sabrina, Michelle, and Andrea for your time tonight and really for just sharing from your heart and your experiences. It was so interesting and engaging to listen to each of you speak and share. Appreciate you. And to all the folks that came tonight, thank you for being part of our community. We encourage you to take the time to volunteer with us and also to donate. Your support really helps these incredible, rich, deep, developed, caring programs continue. So thank you for considering that. And I hope everybody has a beautiful evening.
Thank you, Selena. Thank you for your guidance and leadership. It's been much appreciated. And again, we'll see everyone on the National Mall. And I've been told to tell you again, July 2nd through the 7th. The schedule, you can find it at festival.si.edu. Have a good night.
Thank you.